Iran's supreme leader rejected President Trump's appeal to restart negotiations over its nuclear program yesterday. His response might set the stage for military action to keep Tehran from developing nuclear weapons.
Meanwhile, Israel is keeping a wary eye on Syria after a massacre of Syrian civilians, including Christians. Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem.
On Wednesday, Ayatollah Khamenei dismissed President Trump's letter delivered by the UAE.
I think this is an attempt to deceive global public opinion. This means America wants to talk, make peace, and stop fighting. But Iran is not ready to negotiate.
President Trump has said there are two ways Iran can be handled: militarily, or you make a deal. Earlier this month, Israel and the U.S. held a joint military exercise, including a B-52 bomber, which is seen as a clear message to Iran. In the Oval Office Wednesday, President Trump told reporters no one's expelling anyone from Gaza. His initial proposal including the relocation of all the residents of Gaza so the U.S. could take over and rebuild the territory. Research suggests many Gazans actually want to leave the devastated territories and relocate to countries where they can live in peace. Egypt's opposition to relocating Gazans reportedly causing a rift in its relations with the U.S. The administration notified Cairo it will reduce military aid in 2026. Trump has hinted he'd cut off aid if Egypt did not agree to accept Gazans fleeing the war zone. Egypt receives more than $2 billion in annual aid, most of that in military assistance. On its northern border, Israel is carrying out military strikes inside Syria to eliminate a military threat from the new government. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz warned Syria's new leader that it's prepared to hold key positions in Syria for an indefinite time.
Every morning when al-Jilani opens his eyes in the presidential palace in Damascus, he will see the IDF watching him from the heights of Mount Hermon and will remember that we are here and in all the security areas in southern Syria to protect the residents of the Golan and the Galilee from any threat from him and his jihadist friends.
Katz also pledged to defend the Druze community inside Syria and said they would be allowed to enter the Golan Heights for work. Katz's pledge to the Druze comes in the context of a massacre of Alawites, a minority Islamic sect, and Christians by Islamist groups inside Syria. In a rare diplomatic development, 100 senior figures from Syria's Druze community are set to visit the Israeli-controlled Golan Heights on Friday.
All right, Chris Mitchell is with us now from Jerusalem. Chris, what's the latest on these atrocities you reported on, the massacre of more than 1,000 civilians, possibly many more inside of Syria?
Well, Andrew, we're seeing horrific videos of the slaughter. Maybe have heard many as 10,000 have been killed. It subsided somewhat in the last few days, but some Islamist groups are pledging to continue the massacres, and it does include Christians. I talked with a ministry leader who works in that area, and she says many of these cities and towns are where Alawites and Christians literally live side by side, so many of these Christians have been caught up in this. It's just been a horrific carnage, Andrew, and thousands are trying to escape to Lebanon as well. And yet this ministry leader, I said miracles are happening too, and she says it's really critical to be praying for the Christians, the Alawites, and other minorities, and for the world to pressure the new government and its leader, al-Jilani.
What kind of attacks from inside Syria is Israel concerned about?
Well, they're very concerned, and that's why they've been hitting inside Syria in the last few days and last few weeks. Drone attacks, Andrew. They're concerned about offensive and defensive weapons, missile production, air defenses, and radar installations, any chemical weapons that may remain there, training facilities, anything that could be used by the new regime against Israel. And Israel says it can't allow these weapons to fall into the hands of the new regime. That's why we're seeing these Air Force attacks inside Syria and sending a strong signal to the new Syrian leader, al-Jilani.
All right, well, let's talk about Iran specifically. In your view, is Israel prepared to attack Iran's nuclear program, possibly in conjunction with the United States?
Andrew, it really seems that way. We saw that joint exercise in our report. The White House and Israel seem to be on the same page. Unlike the Biden administration, they're both committed to make sure Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon. On the other hand, Andrew, Iran wants to protect its nuclear program. They want to maintain some leverage over Israel in the region. Since October 7th, Iran has lost two major proxies, Hamas and Hezbollah. Then in December, they lost the Assad regime that had been an arms conduit to Lebanon. So the nuclear program for them is their last major deterrent. They're also under economic pressure with more sanctions by the Trump administration. So now you have a race between a possible military strike by Israel and/or the United States and Iran getting a nuclear weapon, and why it seems that the U.S. and Israel are preparing for a possible attack.
Chris, in the midst of all of this, Israel is celebrating the holiday of Purim. Explain the relevance of the holiday to the standoff now between Israel and Iran going on.
Well, Andrew, about 2,500 years ago, many viewers know, a wicked leader named Haman, he plotted to destroy the Jewish people in ancient Persia, which is where modern Iran is today. But in the book of Esther, God raised up a beautiful Jewish queen named Esther to thwart and expose those plans, as it says, for such a time as this. You can read it all in the book of Esther. Now, 2,500 years later, another wicked ruler, Ayatollah Khamenei, he's pledging to destroy Israel and the Jewish people. So here in Jerusalem, you can see people dressed up in costumes commemorating Purim, celebrated by Jews around the world. And today's many Jews and Christians believe God will thwart the plans of today's wicked ruler, just like he did 2,500 years ago.
All right, Chris, always appreciate your reporting. Thanks so much for being with us today.